Hello, friends. Welcome back to Healing the Divide. I am Scott Feinberg, and today I am joined by two very special guests, Caio Rocha and Pasha Niroo. I'm going to share a little introduction and then a little surprise. Kyle first. Kyle is an associate fellow and chartered member of the British Psychological Society, full member of the International Society of Schematherapy, and he specializes in complex presentations, addictions, personality disorders, treatment failures, and general mental health issues, with an emphasis on psychology and neuroscience, working with adults and adolescents within frameworks of individual and group therapy. My second guest, Pasha Niroo. Pasha is a seeker of truth and love, like many of you listening now. He was fortunate enough to have spent 7 years of his life living in a personal growth school in the Netherlands called the Osho University, where he learned countless meditative, therapeutic, and somatic tools for healing and personal growth. More importantly, though, he came in contact with a greater love, an unconditional love, which he felt through the founder of the Humaniversity, Viresh, and the other members of the community there as well. This unconditional love that he felt gave him a purpose in life, and ever since then, it has been his life work to embody that love and share it with people around him. Currently, Pasha is pursuing a few bachelor's degrees and a license to become a clinical social worker. He's sharing his heart and the tools that he has learned in his weekly inner work and healing classes and monthly workshops at my studio in Jupiter, Florida, Kula Yogashala. And he also offers heart-centered coaching and emotional release sessions and workshops as well. Thank you both so much for being with me today. And for our listeners, we are about to drop a little surprise. It's going to be our first time doing this on the pod. It's going to be a little musical chairs. I am going to shift into the seat of interviewee. Pasha is taking the keys, and he's going to be the interviewer, and he's going to interview myself and Kyle. Can't wait. I'm looking forward to laying back and being on the receiving end of this, and I'm excited for it. So, Pasha, it's all yours.
Hello, everybody. This is very exciting. So thank you. Scott is my coach, and he has helped me a lot with loving myself, even if something challenging is going on with me, and holding space for that and expanding my consciousness, basically, so that I don't have to identify with what I'm experiencing. And it's really beautiful. So he's someone that I really admire, someone that I respect and trust, and he's a living example of it. So, and then Caio, I met him at the Humaniversity where I lived, and he's also a amazing therapist, an amazing man, a good friend, and really knowledgeable. And he actually made the entire school where I trained at aware of something called inner child work, which was a really big healing step in my process. And I think that it's really beautiful and amazing that he got trained in a place, and then he went out and learned things, and he brought it back in such a humble way. Yeah, so he's a really beautiful, brilliant therapist. And I think it's great that we all get the chance to talk about these topics. I made up these questions. I find them really relevant for anyone who's on a healing journey. So let's just dive right in. If you guys are cool with that, is there anything else you want to say before we start?
In the same way, I just wanted to say, especially for the two of you, but also Scott, that I'm meeting today. Thank you so much for the invitation and creating the space, and Pasha for supporting me and trusting me, and you both, from what I get to see, Scott, I started to follow your work and be very touched, the heartfulness and the courage of seeking, and the humbleness that of for everything I saw so far. So I just want to say thank you, and that I feel very honored and very happy to be here with you, and I'm looking forward to all what will come out of what we'll be doing today. So thank you very much.
Beautiful,
Thank
man.
you. Yeah, thank you so much for those words. And I appreciate it. Feels good to be seen. And I'm really looking forward to getting to know you as well, and excited about the format shift, and
Mm.
yeah, ready to dive in, and honored and humbled and grateful to be with both of you.
Thank you, brother. Okay, so can you guys talk a little bit about what emotional awareness is and why it's important?
Well, for me, the two things that come into my mind: emotional awareness, emotional intelligence. That is something, even though there was a book written and it's not really that, I think they are together, and it's one thing that kind of complements or is part of each other. For me, our emotions are our most loyal guide. Of course, you need to differentiate emotions, emotionality, and thoughts. Now, often when I'm working with people, I say, "What do you feel?" They bring me thoughts, so I don't feel I feel I'm not good enough. There's a message there. There's a cognitive part in it. So I always try to get, okay, when you hear that, what do you feel? To help people to become aware of the feeling, the core emotion there. Why do I find that so important? Your emotions are bringing messages. They are telling you what you need. They guide you towards your needs, towards fulfillment. Now, often when I start to work with people, they believe for different reasons and different experiences, their emotions are what creating problems. And it's all their beliefs and their cognition. Your emotions are the most loyal sat nav. If you're looking for direction, if you're lost in life, is there that you're going to find answers. I believe, in a way, you could say, I believe God talks to us through the heart, not through the mind, right? So within that is learning, that we can't really choose what we feel, but we can choose what we do with our feelings, how we respond to our feelings, where the aspect of emotional intelligence for me or emotional maturity, if you like, however it fits more for people, how it makes more sense. But so again, I think is essential, is crucial, is something that you can't avoid in your life. You need to learn to feel, you need to learn to listen, because that will guide you, that tells you what you need, and then with that you can choose different choice behaviors, different responses, so you can start to create and continue to create the life that is fulfilling for you. If you don't have that guidance, you're lost. Your mind is like the heart is the engine that moves everything. The heart needs to be in charge, where the mind is just the driver. If you have a terrible driver in a great car, no good results. But if you also have a great car as a terrible driver, also not good result. So the mind is a beautiful slave and a terrible master. The heart tells you, and the mind creates the strategy. Okay, how do I get there? So you can think and make choices. That for me would be a bit of my understanding of emotional awareness and intelligence, and why is it so important. What do you think?
Yeah, thank you for sharing that so beautifully. I think in some ways similar, in some ways maybe subtly different, but I'd want to start with saying that for me, my understanding, and I'll lead this entire conversation with work in progress, that we as we were kind of chatting about prior to recording, that we're all on a journey. And so I'll just share from where my current understanding and approach is. But when I think of the two words themselves, I tend to think of awareness first and foremost more as subject than object. That awareness is what we are. That fundamental to our nature as consciousness, fundamental to the nature of all of experience of reality, is awareness. And so awareness can operate on a spectrum, on this continuum from the unmanifest, in the purest sense of awareness itself, all the way into the manifest objects of reality, all the way into the most dense vibration of form. And then we're in we're this beautiful bridge as human beings. And we have this entire spectrum of consciousness, from the unmanifest, unproduced aspects, all the way down into this body that we have, and that we're in subject object referral, where we are in constant relationship to the world around us, and that when our awareness touches and makes contact with aspects of this dynamic and diversified experience of life, we have a certain adaptation experience that occurs at the different levels of our being, where to the degree of awareness that's available to us in any given moment, we can either essentially enmesh and conflate our identification largely to the object that we're perceiving, and how we want it to look, and how we don't want it to look, and how we want it to unfold and how we don't. Or we can be in this more released and open awareness that lets everything have its nature. And I think to the degree that we're really contracted into identification with our surroundings, we're essentially in a space of forgetting our nature. And when we're in that more open consciousness, we're in a space of remembering. And then if we were to look at the idea of emotional awareness within that framework, I sense into it as that the more contracted I become in terms of my awareness, the more identified I am with emotion. And I'm starting to lose the ability for emotion to be that really powerful emissary that it is, as you were talking about, Kyle, as that guide. And I'm losing that because I'm looking for it to tell me who I am rather than how I am. And when I can have the practices and the moment to moment awareness that support that less myopic and maybe a more widened aperture of awareness, I can then hold emotion in the way that you described, where I can now really start to mine inside of it and get curious, like, why did I have the reaction that I did? Where did that come from? Where does it go when it dissolves? What is it looking for? Why is mine and how is mine different than somebody else's? And get, really curious with it. And so I think emotional awareness, I would define as our capacity to be present to our emotional state, to the degree of availability that we have to simultaneously be present to our essential nature. And that can be largely compromised or a very sovereign and full experience. I'm not a big proponent of bypassing emotions and then like looking at life like a sterile, neutral, gray playing field. I want to experience emotion fully, but I don't want to lose myself in the experience of it. And then where there might be a little subtle difference, and I'm not sure, it could be semantics too, is I guess it depends on on a similar idea of mind. I would say I agree with what you were sharing from the standpoint of when that myopic awareness, when that mind, or that sort of that degree of consciousness in mind is trying to be the driver, it does not go well. You're right. But when I can expand mind to as the instrument, very similar. Sometimes I call them heart mind. It's sort of this allyship between the two, and as they start to elevate into their higher frequencies, they work really well together. And then when we're at the lower frequencies, they tend to be combative. And that's probably how I would approach the question. I don't know how that lands. I don't know if that's actually disagreement or more of the lens through which we're perceiving the object, mind or heart.
It's really beautiful. I actually see it as layers, and I'm really happy that the listeners can listen to this, because I think when you start working on yourself, I think a good question is like, what do I feel? What am I feeling? Because that's, in a way, I see it as something that we have been bypassing through our negative behaviors, because whatever we feel might be too much, or, this pain there, or whatever, for whatever reason. So I think it's important to start with like, what am I sensing? And to learn how to sense and feel that and see what we need. But then at a certain point, I do agree, the ability to be able to hold that and not fully identify with that, but to identify as the one that can hold that is more than that. But I think that it can be in aversion if you haven't done the first step,
Mm-hmm.
if you haven't like let yourself feel, understand where that feeling's coming from, or say like, okay, I'm not that feeling, and I will take the time later to understand what that feeling is. And I think that they're like compliments, and they're really beautiful compliments. Yeah. So thank you both for your responses.
Like I find it as well, and what you said, Pasha, it complements. It's from a different angle. When you were talking, I thought, yeah, and the metaphor of the car, and the emotions need to be the passenger. They can't be in charge either. The awareness is in charge. If not, you get in trouble. It's like, yeah, it goes.
The heart is in charge.
It got yeah, exactly, the guidance, the awareness, the combination, this hard mind that you said, that's beautiful. That needs to be there. Now, if you in one or the other with this narrow thing, then it always creates, because then there is no awareness. Who is looking at it? You're not what you feel. You're just feeling something.
Mm-hmm.
So beautiful, great.
Yeah. Yeah, and Pasha, I actually really appreciate that layer you folded in there as well, which is uh, just starting with the basic recognition of what am I feeling. And I think that's really important because to the degree that we are established in identification with the feeling, like in the form of a big reaction or just a heavy or difficult emotion we might be processing, the aspect of being able to identify what that feeling is expanding awareness around it, and it starts to make it a little bit more malleable, and it essentially moves it from being the subject to an object where we can start to become curious and investigate the attachments that might live in those spaces subtly, so it could, or the aversions that might live in those spaces. And so it's as if we are going from being in a space of presumed attachment to a particular experience that's happening out here in front of us, and then stepping back another layer where instead of attaching to an object, the object becomes attachment. And now I can start to explore my relationship more directly with the energies that are embroiled inside of that particular expression of attachment. And that's an empowering experience, because what's happening out here in all these phenomenological fluctuations is, it's of its own nature. It's of change, and it's outside of our influence largely. But to go, wow, you know what? That was the way I saw that and interpreted that. And that's from this experience in my past, lets me start to have a deeper sense of sovereignty and empowerment and autonomy in working with the emotion more directly.
Yeah, I feel like it's cultivating the one who can hold it.
Yeah.
Mm.
That's something I find really beautiful about the way you work, especially coming from a Osho background, which is very tantric, which is very much I am what I feel, and to like also cultivate that part. I think it's a really beautiful compliment.
Yeah, I mean, Tantra is, it's funny you share it from that lens, because I'm in the middle of reading this like thick 1,000-year-old Tantric Sutra that's really, really beautiful. And it's funny how, like, in particular schools of Tantra, because they're, especially like the some of the left-hand Kaula schools of Tantra have a more of a, like, there is definitely a like pushback against the bypass current that is like the sort of like Vedanta and a lot of streams that want to transcend and reject the material. And Tantra's embrace of the material experience, which includes emotion, is really beautiful. And it speaks of 7 levels of perception, and they call them the 7 perceivers. And inside of that framework, it's not it. I wouldn't say it quite as saying I am my emotion. It's a little more subtle. I'd say it's something like I am more than my emotion, but I am my emotion too. In other words, every manifest experience that I'm having can't be anything but pure awareness. And if that is an undivided tapestry, this whole totality of what we call reality, and awareness is present anywhere in this, and the whole is within the part and it's holographic, then awareness is always present in all these things. So we don't want to discount or negate any aspect of the experience and say, I'm not my emotion. So if like I'm not my emotion is one pole and I am my emotion is another pole, the way I understand Tantra would in the word tan to be tensile and tra to travel to have a system that wraps almost like saran wrap, including both of those poles would say something like, while I am not limited to my emotional experience, that is a vital, valuable, necessary, and beautiful part of my experience.
Amazing.
How does that land? I don't know. I'm not too familiar with Osho teachings, so I don't know.
Yeah, so the work I'm trained in is really about being total.
Total, yeah.
Completely, like you're totally your anger in that moment that you're expressing it. You're totally your pain. And through that totality, you become it, and you can go past it. You know, so to keep that I'm not it can be an aversion at the time of doing such a practice. You know, at least that's my, if you're in like thinking in your head, I'm not this, but if you can really allow yourself to fully go into what it is, so that's the work. But I find the complement of like also being able to hold that and be more than that as well, a really beautiful compliment. But it's I don't know if that's clear. It's also a work in progress for me. That might be obvious as well. I'm also trying to figure out, I am it, but I'm holding it, so.
Well, I think that's it, is like being both at once and that what seems like a contradiction is actually the paradox. That's when in Tantra we talk about Shiva Shakti. It's not Shiva and Shakti, it's Shiva Shakti. It is one thing. And that's what challenges us, is to hold both. So the totality is really the transcendent and the immanent simultaneously arising anew in every single moment. And that's it.
Because if you go just with the part that I am, this bypass, if you go just, I'm not the emotion, the risk is that you detach, and then you're not living a part of you, is a part of you. Is happening to you in that moment. They're attaching to it and over-identifying is a problem, but also trying to do the opposite. Oh, I'm not my emotion, meaning as a detachment. How would that guide you if you don't, I can't have a guide if I'm not listening to it. So I need that level of distance to listen to it, but I need to be in it. I need to feel it. Because that guide talks through me. So I am there, I'm listening, but I'm it, and I go into it. And you see how interesting, if you look in a brain level, can you imagine how long an emotion technically takes to pass through your brain?
It's like 90 seconds, is that
90
right?
seconds.
Yeah.
You see? So technically that is a minute and a half is done. But what happens there then? And I think that ability to be total in it and at the same time observe is what will bring us closer to that 90 seconds, because then it's like, oops, yeah, it happened. Gave me an information, I got it. Good. It's like a phone call. If you understand what is being said, you get the information. Thank you very much. Now, if you don't, you're going to stay there. You're going to fight with it. You start to argue. It's just a messenger. Don't shoot the messenger, right? But you need to be with that when it comes. You need to allow yourself to go into it. And it's like Osho would talk about the swimming pool. You're there, when you're in the swimming pool, you're swimming, you're part of it, but then you also not the, is a way to learn, is a way to guide you. So you need to be total there, because if not, you're kind of in detachment or fighting. But then you don't identify. You also the meditator. You also the awareness. You also that's who you really are. Is that witness that is there. But if people go straight into that's the risk. I think when I'm working with people, if they want to go straight into, oh, I'm just noticing, I'm not feeling, my emotions are there. Boy, you're just into a mind trip. You're not actually, really experience anything. I had things in life with teachers that would say, okay, now visualize the emotion there, and then so it's dissolving. Why would we have them? And If you think about it, it comes first. If we come ready, feeling is there already. Then we learn to think. The thinking you should question, but the feeling is there. It's giving you guidance. It's the limbic system. If without that you don't survive, try to. If people come in the clinic, they want to get rid of. Try to live without anger. Try to live without fear. Try to live without pain. Try to live without love. Impossible. I believe that emotion, the only emotion that is there is love, and everything else is either because the love was not given and like they come from me, but that's the core. That's the only thing that really exists, to the point that I don't believe, I tell my patients, my clients, I don't believe in positive and negative emotions. For me, they're just emotions. Mm-hmm. There might be guests that you like more than others, but they're guests. They come by, they tell you what they need to tell you. And if you're not attached to it, you're not identify, you go totally into that. Like if you are with a lover, you totally into that, with your partner, with your, but then you also still an individual. You're still yourself. You know, you don't, if you want to merge, your relationship will be problematic. If you also stay always distant and, giving yourself fully is also problematic. So it's kind of it's how you're relating to yourself, isn't it?
It's so well said, and I really, I love the embrace where it's not a spiritual bypass, and it's not bypassing spirit, and it's really holding both simultaneously and being fully with what is in front of you in that moment, being fully present in total for that moment, and having this deep discernment that at the core of every one of these emotional experiences that we're having, this is probably the highest emotional awareness, what you just said, that at the core of all of them is love. When we really, and I don't say that in a sort of esoteric way, but more in the sense that it's when we were longing for love, but we thought it was lost, or it was, we felt rejected, or we felt abandoned, or we were looking for a connection and there was an unmet need. And so all these afflictive, kind of categorize them as like the afflictive emotions that we're experiencing, they're such natural parts of our human experience, are essentially different models of our relationship to the core energy and emotion and intelligence that is love. And if you unpack any argument that you ever get in, you can always get back to, well, I was looking for love or affirmation, connection, healing, and it always comes back there. And that's why when we get to fully work through them, it brings us into deeper love with ourselves and with one another.
That's so beautiful. Thank you both. That was really I didn't prepare this as a question, but it's coming up for me. You guys okay with, yeah? So we spoke about the emotions and the awareness, and we were even playing about who's driving. And I think we settled on the driver being, I would use the word heart. I think Kyle also used a similar word, or you guys said awareness. I think what you call it isn't so important. The way I experience it is my heart. I come down here and I ask about a situation I'm going through, and I get an answer, and I do my best to follow it, and that's my integrity, because I want to make sure that, because I find the driving precious, because it affects myself and the people around me. Mm-hmm. and I want to love as much as I can. How do people cultivate that driver? Because they have the feelings coming up, they have the thoughts coming up, but how do they cultivate the one who's directing the show?
I love this question so much. I just left a coach session where that was the topic, and so it's timely. I think there's many ways. Speak to it briefly and just say that there's essentially, if you could reduce down those many ways to something, it's, as I understand it, spending as much time as possible in your moment-to-moment experience of life, relationship to, with, and as the core of being itself. So, and by whatever way you have available to you to conceive of that. So it doesn't so much even matter if it's accurate in terms of this is the fundamental nature of reality, because we're in a transformational experience of expanding. It's more about the direction that we're sending our consciousness to have some sort of embodied experience where I can ask myself something like, how would this experience unfold or appear through the lens of my deepest wisdom or my clearest guidance, or by whatever way of framing that sentence that allows you to be proximal to your essential nature, will start to little by little, you can say little by little rework the experiences as they unfold in front of you in real time. And I think that's where the work lives, is with whatever is in front of us in any given moment. So what happens is we have that sort of moment by moment experience. And then I'd say we also have formal practices, meditation, yoga, prayer, mantra, deep, the dyad work and emotional release work, all these different tools and facilitation practices and therapies and that we have available to us now, that are like deep dives, plant medicine, things that are like really like whoosh you back into center. So if I sit and I meditate for a half hour this morning, that's going to serve me as I move through my day. But even in that moment, it's going to open me to a more expansive experience of consciousness. And as I go through life, what will happen is, if I started from identification with and reaction to all of the experiences around me, as I keep doing that work little by little, then the driver starts to become the predominant awareness, and the one who was driving just kind of, they don't get tossed out. There's no adversary or bad guy. They move to the passenger seat. In fact, sometimes I will literally buckle in the passenger seat in my car, and say, you can come and you can look through the front seat and you can share thoughts, but I'm gonna drive now, and it'll integrate that part rather than reject that part.
I love that, Scott, because I see it in the aspect as well. It's all integration. There's nothing that is, all suffering comes from resistance, right? So when you start to reject parts, I was like, I cultivating that. Going back to your answer, to your question, Pasha, I agree completely with Scott. It's like this awareness is the ability to be. The more I can be present, I'm experiencing everything, but there is also part that is there, looking at it, observing. Sometimes I'm gonna say, okay, now, I'm gonna rest a bit. You drive. This is the moment that the mind comes in. Okay, now the emotions are gonna go full into it. Okay, you drive. But I know that I'm there coordinating everything. I'm observing. I'm noticing. I'm not identifying. But it's all part of me. It's me and it's not me at the same time. It might sound opposites, but it's actually, for me, the complementary. I had the image of a bee flying, and then when you look at the bee house or their host, you're the flying, and then now you want to go into the hole because you need to get your food there. So okay, you go fully. They don't go halfway. They dive into either the flower, and then they come out. This in all these practices, they are different ways. Tantra is also that you said about it. When I don't know if it's still, and probably nobody will ever remember the name, but Dakshina the white type Tantra, you're vegetarian, and they talk about. It's also lifestyle, and I remember it's all about this thing. It's like, be there, present. Don't worry about what you're getting. For instance, often people associate tantra just with sexuality, even though it's a little part of it. But even in that, it's like, forget about, just always work to be told to be present. A bit like Osho's approach as well. It's just about being totality. For me is presence. You can't be total if you're not present. If you're making an effort to be total and you're thinking that you need to do something, that you have that demand, you're already unable to be total, because total is relaxed, is not tense. So cultivating this understanding and these experiences like meditation, the therapy as well, we go there, we dive. The passion is like, I was walking on the woods about a month and a half, and this came up very strongly to me. I was going through something there, and I thought to myself, why do you identify yourself so much with your history? This is not just what happened to you. It helps you to understand that you're not, let's say, losing your mind that this makes sense because you had to do this in your past, but it's something that world gave it to you. This is not who you are. It's just what you've been through, you know. And suddenly there was that boom, you know, whatever trauma is like, and I think in that way, it's like we go in and we cultivate this, go in and out, but cultivate the idea that be in the moment as much as you can. Don't buy into the stories. I tell people often in therapy, you know, I tend to get people that have been to many therapists before. You know, this treatment failure, that is a terrible name that they call that, but that's just for the understanding of it, or treatment resistant, treatment failures, these labels. They have been to many therapists, and what I see is that there's an over identification with your narrative. Who is talking? Who is that? Practice.
Mhm.
In any situation, practice. What story my mind is saying? You know, what are my feelings telling me? And then you can also, because your mind will talk about a lot of crap as well. You know, there's a beautiful work that called How Emotions Are Made that brings back to what you said, Scott. This woman that looks at this in that way, that, and she's a neuroscience, she says, actually, people always thought that emotions were like reflexes, like you tap on the knee, and no, emotions go to always a cognitive process of interpretation. So they are made based on how you see things, and you see things based on what you've been through in your life. If you learn to observe that again, you say, oh, well, I think like this because of that, but do I really think like this? And then you start again. There's one way that I cultivated. You start to think, okay, but what do I really think? Because I'm just in my automatic, how I learn to think. And this is how do I really think? Then for me, that starts to tap into awareness that is not even thinking. It's like, what do I see here? How is it for me? You know, and then you can even think, you know, maybe things that you've been thinking your whole life, but do I agree with that? Have I ever questioned this story? And that starts to be also for me a form of cultivation of getting more into my center. And hopefully, as I think the goal of my work, the goal of the work I do with myself, as much as possible, is to go back to the original innocence of a child where everything is just total present. You know, you see, I'm around my stepson, it's like, boy, what a teacher. 5 minutes doesn't exist, man. And then we get annoyed because they put a tantrum that they have no ice cream. But I'm gonna give you the ice cream on the weekend. That doesn't mean anything to them. They're completely present in the moment. There's a lot of learning for me there. I find it beautiful. I look at it and say, wow. And, you know, and then again, okay, of course we develop and we grow and life is always moving. You know, can we go back to before we get all the programming, and can we start to look at our programming? That's one way I try to cultivate this awareness. Like, I'm trying to see my program. I try to see all what is automatic, to not to be in any moment in automatic anymore, to really be present. And it's not questioning from a point of this is right, this is wrong. It's questioning from a point of, is this really who I am? Is this really serving me now? Because maybe I had to fight. I grew up in Brazil. I had to fight. But does this serve me now? Absolutely not. But if I'm automatic, boom, that okay. And I find that journey. That's the way for me. A lot of the way I cultivate is that it's kind of constantly understanding, differentiating my history, my thoughts, my feelings from the one that is there, and reinventing myself if I need to. Because I'm none of that. I can be, whoever I want to be. The cultivation of this part also brings me freedom. So I mean, I can go on about it, but I think it's a beautiful question, and it's really profound as well. So thank you, and I think it's great for people to go and think. I don't think there is a fixed answer for that. If we meet in a week's time, I think there will be more coming up, and that's the beauty of it as well. And that's part of the cultivation as well. Stay open. But Ash also used to say always to us, right? Keep it open, keep it open, keep it open. And I love that. Just keep it open. That's part of how I believe that we need to cultivate that.
Beautiful, guys. Thank you. So for someone who's just starting to work on themselves or getting in touch with their feelings, a good answer would be asking yourself, what would the most wise or loving version of me do in this situation, and using personal growth tools to get in contact with who you really are.
I like the question as well, Pasha. What do I need? Always, what do I need? Because the emotion is just there to tell you the need. And the need is food. And it's basically love. But in what shape? In what way? What do I need? For me, it's always helpful as well to put that in, as you mentioned, people that are starting. Learn to see what your emotions, the function of it is to tell you what you need. So if you learn to observe that, when you feel something, okay, what do I need? What is it telling me? What do I need? Oh, I need to put more limits. I need to be more, I need connection. I need, okay. And I think that's very important for people that are starting so they don't get trapped. It's a way to not to get trapped again and over, identify with the feeling. What do I need?
Beautiful.
I love that question. And I often utilize that same question and follow it up with, am I willing to find the support to help me meet that need now? And there's something about that relationship between the part of you that is in some experience of suffering and the part of you that then goes into the advocating for, that's like, I will meet that need for you, that unto itself is therapeutic. It creates that relationship of feeling heard, seen, supported, and cared for. And so now we start to layer in the observation of the experience, which, as I'm taking away from what you're sharing, Kyle, is not simply in sort of the binary come out, go back in, but come out so that I can go in deeply, so that I'm not feeling the narrative, which would actually not be being fully in it. That would be re-traumatizing in the name of feeling. But to actually clarify what the core feeling is and what part of me is that. And then from that clarity, allow myself to fully feel, identify what the feeling is, feel that feeling in that 90-second sort of drive-through experience of being all in. And then what do I need? And am I willing and able to meet that need? And if I'm not, how can I call in the support, which is still me being able to, by reaching out for where that person or practice or tool might be. And then we put it into action. And what you described to me was so beautiful, is that we're interpreting our experiences through the lens of our history. And so oftentimes that which is hysterical in nature, whether that's outwardly or inwardly, is historical in nature. And our capacity to recognize that that's typically a little person behind a big behavior is allows us to come into relationship with that part with curiosity and with compassion and with an openness, as he said, to hear what is the experience that you're having without an overlay of judgment or shame. And what I see a lot is that's where it goes off for people, is the awareness comes in, but it gets co-opted quickly by another voice that shames themselves for having that experience. And so it's like, wow, instead of like fist bump, high five, like good catch, you are aware of that. It's like, and you shouldn't be doing that. And that's why you're suffering. It's like, when are we going to be on our own team? When do we actually
Absolutely. I love that, Scott. And then just to is one of the things that I find it really, as Pasha was talking about, tools for people that are starting. Of course, we're not talking about psychotic voices. We're talking about the voices that we have inside, so people understand what kind of voice we're talking. Yeah, I mean, I tell you, I had a patient that was at work and said, "Oh, the critical voice is really loud." Half an hour later, he was calling the manager's office because they thought he was hearing voices, and he was referring to, because we use this term inside of the work we do. This is a big tool as well. Identify there is a child in there, there's an angry child, there is a critical, there is a punitive, and there is your wise, your healthy, wise self that is the part that is, again, we're talking about the driver there. But notice, shame is not even real. We learn to feel that. Ever seen a baby feeling shame or something? That is a social emotion as well as guilt. They're important, now don't get me wrong, but we learn to feel that. Have you ever seen a child that feels guilty of screaming at 3 o'clock in the morning because the parents have to work the next day? That doesn't exist, man. We're not born with that. We taught you shouldn't do that. Gosh. So all these messages, learn to listen to all these voices to see who is in charge, who you living in the driver's seat. Because if you live your critical, you live your punitive, or your child, imagine putting my stepson to drive the car. He's great for many things, but that's not his, So learn to observe and identify, label if you're starting. Write it down on a paper, give them names. Oh, that's the bully, that's the this, that's the that. So you can practice this awareness. It's such a fun way because the self is composed of multiple parts. And the more you're not aware of it, the more you're going to be flipping to this part. And this is what we call mood swings in psychiatric terms. It's mode flipping. You get into that numb space, the detachment, your coping start, and you flip into the child that is frightened and anxious, and you flip into an angry child that storms out. And then the punitive come in and say you're bad and you feel all guilty. You need to learn all of these parts so you can nourish and be more and more into their wise, healthy adult.
I think
it's interesting,
Thank you. Yeah, I think what most people struggle with, me included, is when the feeling is in the nervous system, when they feel anxious, when they feel overwhelmed, to be able to detach from that feeling and maybe allow what's really going on to come up, or for them to feel what the feeling is. For example, I just arrived in the house at the Humaniversity, and I've been really happy with how I've been able to relate. I feel like I've been able to hold my trips and give them love and be there and be present as that higher self as best as I could. And then when I can't, love that part. We did an emotional release session, and I hit a really deep feeling of the fear of being punished. And I felt like I touched the part of me which is behind all the thoughts and the trips. Like I felt like I touched the one who was having all these trips and thoughts, and I could allow the feeling. Then it's a meditation that I'm referring to, where we do emotional release. For those who don't understand, the meditation moves into different stages. The next stage came where it was time to relate to others and apologize. And when that stage came, I blocked the feeling. It was like, for whatever reason, I blocked the feeling. Since then, I have been feeling a sense of like anxiety in my body, and I've been holding it, giving it love, holding it, but like it's a lot to feel, to have. So I know that I just need some space for myself to feel. I have those tools now, but I think that I think that's where people struggle. When they feel it so much in their body, how to step out from that, how to take space for that. And I think it's a really beautiful question that you brought up, Kyle. What do I need? Like I need time to relax and feel safe, so that I can let this pain come out, and I can like hold myself through it, and so I just wanted to share that, because I think that a lot of people when they're in it, it's a bit harder to take that position.
And your example is so beautiful, because you see, anxiety is anticipation, anxiety is lack of movement, anxiety is us trying to control. Of course, there is a form of anxiety that is part of life we're all going to experience, but when we get stuck, or again, technical terms, the pathological anxiety, it's all in the head. It's emotionality, it's not emotion anymore. It's anxiety. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. So but you also feel it in the body.
Yep, anxiety is a kind of a false alarm that you're in danger.
Yeah.
But it's based in what happened in the past. So you're anticipating, like you said, I'm anticipating punishment. But who can punish you today apart from yourself? You're an adult. So it goes back to that child inside of you. And if you can reach that child, and like you said, take your time. Hey, I'm here. I ain't going to let anybody punish you and hurt you. And you hold it and you embrace, and that the anxiety starts to, the reassurance that the part of you that is unable to protect itself has you protecting it now. The wise mind is there. And like you said, often people feel a lot in the body, but anxiety happens in the brain. Is our thoughts that driving us. As if we really go into the body, the anxiety goes. Lack of movement, including move. When you're anxious, you need to move. You need to get into your body even more, because it's all happening in your head. It's too much future, too much anticipation. We no longer, as we talked about before, you asked the cultivation, we're no longer in the moment. we're already busy with what is coming, and that's ends, you know. And it's a difficult, when we're in it, it's a really difficult experience. I mean, often, at least labeled as difficult, is uncomfortable, isn't it? Because it's like we get the feeling that we're not safe, and everything goes tense. If you're gonna have everything, it's like your amygdala firing up, and it's okay.
I was going in that same direction mentally. Was, it's interesting when we think about these ideas of like shame and guilt, how they're past oriented and how fear and anxiety are future oriented, and both of them are taking us out of the present. And our body and our breath is having this experience. So when it gets trapped in the body that way, and we're losing clarity, we're losing frontal brain awareness, we're in that high amygdala overload, and we need to come into the body. And it's been really refreshing, honestly, to see the psychological field and trauma therapy and traumatology start to really recognize the value of somatics. And it's one of the things I was reading Body Keeps the Score, whatever it is, 4 or 5 years ago, and it came out, and then at the end, and it's like da 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 da, and it's like all these things that like we do in yoga, and I was anticipating what this was going to be, because I've been teaching yoga since 2002, and I'm seeing it day to day. I'm seeing people walk in, in these like hyper anxious states, or even really like shut down states too, where they're frozen in their bodies, and the practice just starts to thaw them or discharge energy that's like bouncing like pong inside of their heads, and they get into their body, they regulate their breath, they're co-regulating to the communal experience, and the practices are powerful. And and I'm just going, wow, this is really amazing to see now with the with the understanding of polyvagal theory, and understanding those applications within yoga practices. That's one of the things we're doing in our 300-hour training right now, where we're training yoga teachers in this sort of applied neuroscience within yoga, where they can start to go, okay, these are the actual things that you can do to tone your vagus nerve. And this is how you can, let me say it this way, it's challenging. Pasha, I have a lot of empathy for what you shared, because it can feel really scary when we're in an anxiety overload, and we're having big emotion come out. We're trying to mentally frame, well, this is what's happening, and I need to be the witness, and none of it works, because if our nervous system is offline, we don't have access to those parts. And it's like, even if you remember you have tools at your disposal, which you might not even remember, it's as if they've become like disempowered. But going to the body, regulating the nervous system, and then now I can start to, do some exploration work, hold some space for inner child work. But I would love to hear your thoughts on this, Kyle. I always go, if I see like we're in it, like you're in the trauma vortex in some way, and you're going beyond the window of tolerance, come out and get into your body, and then come back when you're ready. And the last piece I'll layer in here is that coming out process, and getting to come into the body and out of the like overwhelm of the experience, has to me demonstrated itself to be maybe even, I'll say, equal to, if not more valuable than the time spent inside of the window, because there's something about the agency to leave that is the very thing that we lost oftentimes in the underlying imprint that's getting pushed on, that's generating the traumatic response. Mm-hmm. And now we're getting to have a disconfirming experience that says, I can leave this. I didn't know I can be like, enough is enough. I can come out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, just to remind, because it's something also that you said, Pasha, trauma is re-experienced through the interpretation of the mind. The trauma gets projected, gets painted into our. I give you a simple example. I go into a relationship. One of my traumas is feeling not important, feeling that I wasn't important. That almost like if I didn't exist in my home. Now my parents were in a lot of difficulties in their relationship, so there was a lot of chaos and fighting. And I was a little kid there, and my understanding of that is that I don't matter. I don't exist. I'm not important. And I look back in my relationships, how many of my romantic relationships I experienced exactly that. But in that moment, I couldn't see that this is just my trauma because it was due to my interpretation, because I was interpreting. If the person snaps, you see, I'm not important. If the person says, I want to be alone in my space, I'm not important. My mind kept on projecting. I was constantly reliving my trauma with no awareness. It was on the body when I started to get into the body that became also easier to see. Is it really? It was almost like then I could go back to from the neuroscience aspect, my prefrontal cortex that I thought I was using, but I was far from using it. I was thinking, but that was nothing to do with wise, and think about it. Wait a second. Is there another way to understand this? But it's always come out, regulate what you need, and then you get the understanding. If you try to throw mind there, your mind is not available for that in that moment. You're in survival. You're in fight, freeze, and fly. It is not time to think. It's not time to analyze. For me, therapy is not about analysis, it's about awareness. Analysis can lead to paralysis, as we say. Right? If you analyze too much, you get frozen. It's not time to think. Thinking is secondary in that moment. It's like, hey, back home. Get out of your trauma. Beautiful what you said, Scott. We can realize that now we have a way out that we didn't have. What would I do as a 4 or 5 years old? I had to stay there. Now it's like, okay, I'm out. Out meaning I go into my body, I get out of my stories, I see what I need, I work on that. Afterwards, if I need an understanding, if I need to put things so I can prevent next time, and fine, then I go back to thinking. Not in that moment.
Beautiful. So beautiful, guys. Thank you. It's perfect. So the next question was actually about trauma. It's great that you guys mentioned to first go into the body and then to start to do the regulating work, because I see a lot of people really like to find their way out of it, and I see that for some people it's challenging to start to do the regulating work or to go back to look, and I see them in a way run by the trauma underneath, and then they become kind of addicted to their ways out of it. And the growth kind of stops there. But I have a lot of empathy, because it takes a lot of courage to go to say like, hey, I'm going to look at this stuff. And I think it's really valuable to mention that sometimes when you're in it, it's not the time to solve it. It's just the time to feel safe. So the question I had, or did you want to say something, Caio?
I would just say, just for what you said, there is nothing to be solved. You just need healing. Integration and getting your mind to understand that this is no longer happening, because the mind looks for consistency by maintaining. You need to always understand that there is a biological part and there is a conscious part. Only 5% of what is going on in your brain you're consciously aware of. That's why it's so important to get to the other parts, so to expand that as a way of saying, right? So biologically, your mind is busy keeping you alive and so you can reprocreate. Okay, to put it in a simple way, even though that might be a bit disappointing for people. That's just the biology. We're much more than that. Just one aspect. Okay, so biologically, I say this to my patients and my clients' patients. Good therapy is against the nature of the brain from a biological aspect. Why? Your brain wants to keep things as it is, see as it is, because it knows that it can survive, because it's been through already. So for more than consciously, like I want to, you're going to get into a fight. Your brain wants the experience to repeat. That's why we repeat so many patterns in life, because it gives consistency and predictability and guarantees survival, right? So my concern, just when we put it out as of addressing the trauma, first of all, is clear. That's partially what Van der Kolk shows to us. It's very specific moments that you have to go back to the story. It's not in the past until recently. A lot of trauma work was like, oh, you need to go, you need to really, you need to process the trauma. Nah, the work with trauma is being able to be present with your emotions in the here and now. That's the final goal. Okay. If you need to go to the story there, or what has happened that I'm calling story, okay. For instance, I work a lot with imagery scripting. I get the person in detachment to tell me what happened, so they don't really experience before. And then we go to the imagery before something happened. I'm already there, either me or somebody that they trust as a healthy adult, and stop and change completely the outcome of the situation. So I create in the brain, because memory is formed by having the five senses. If I can engage that in the imagery, I created a new memory. Your mind knows, oh, but this happens in the clinic with Caio and the other one happened. But from a brain level, the moment that I open a new pathway is as real as any other memory, because all our memories are subjective. Okay. So I can create a positive memory. Then your brain has a choice. There is the negative and there is the positive. And then I encourage my patients to reinforce the new one. I don't want them reliving the trauma and going through all the chemical release and so on. I want them to already, before that happened, okay, let's go. What would you like to have happen? Oh, that my dad will have come home and said, we're not going to fight anymore and embrace me. So that's what I'm going to nourish. I want that memory. I have traumas nowadays that when I think, I remember the rescripting that I did in the clinic. I have to consciously force myself to reinforce, like consciously remember, oh, but there was another version there. So it's important that people understand you're not going to erase trauma. You're not going to get rid of it. You just need to learn, give your brain other options. And you don't need to keep going back there. Actually, don't keep going back there. It's traveling in time. We're working to be in the present. There are moments that it's necessary to go there, but there are very specific situations. It's not really what we need to do. I want people to understand, because often people keep, even to their friends, and they keep talking about it. You're reliving, you're putting your body through all that stress again. I just wanted to, I spoke more than I thought I would, but I just wanted to put that when you said that, because I see a lot of the times people come to the clinic, they want to go back there. I understand that was the knowledge till now, but we know by far that this is not good, because also your brain gets addicted to these chemicals. It wants the adrenaline, it wants these things, and we need to go into the withdrawal and reset all of that.
Beautiful, man. It's in a way answering the question that I wanted to ask, which is, I recently heard that for a specific mental illness, that an area for specific mental illnesses, that an area of the brain stops developing due to trauma. Therefore, a part of that person stays at that age. I personally went a bit deeper with that and started wondering, is that how all trauma works? Does it stop brain development and sort of freeze a part of us in a certain state or age? If that is true, are there some ways that one can overcome this? Can it ever be completely healed? And you just mentioned that it's not about healing it, it's about reintegrating it and finding a new way. But I just wanted to say it out loud, because I feel like we're already talking about it. And I was wondering, Scott, how do you feel about trauma and healing and working with it? And yeah, I can relate a lot to what you said, Kyle, about how it's specific moments where actually a need needs to be met, where a part of us wasn't able to get something, or we thought we weren't able to get something, and to give that part that need, and then keep reaffirming that part, like, okay, I got you, you're safe, and I learned that also from you, Scott. So how do you feel about the topic? What comes up for you?
Yeah, similar. I think one of the great disservices that's happened in the healing world and in regards to trauma is this sentence that has truth through a particular lens, but lacks truth through a different lens, which is you have to feel it in order to heal it. And I think that there is value from the lens that you shared earlier, to be total with the emotion as it's there, and let it come, let it be, and let it go. Those are the three phases of, and Tantra speaks to this. They speak of they call it the 5 acts. And the first act is emergence. The second act is an existence. The third act is a reabsorption. And the other two are an either or, which is to be in remembering or forgetting of true nature, while those three things are just doing what they do. So I think in that lens, it's healthy. Where it becomes unhealthy is when there's not sufficient awareness present for the emotion. That if you define trauma as not the experience that occurred, but the impact of the experience, and how it is continuing to travel with you.
Mm-hmm.
And the narratives then that we've taken it out of the direct immediacy of the imprint, and we're replaying it. And when we do the replay and we say, well, I have to feel it in order to heal it, and all I'm doing is rewind, press play, over and over again, I'm re-traumatizing my nervous system over and over and over again, and I'm digging a deeper samskara, a deeper impression into my subconscious. And so I think that is it's sad, because it's like, in the name of overcoming the identification piece with it, or really it should say more clearly, in the name of integrating the part of us that has felt siloed off, felt exiled from the whole of ourselves. It's never full fragmentation. I want to say that too is where spirituality can inform psychology in some ways, from the non-dual tantric perspective, would say you can't fundamentally have fragmentation, but we can have the perception of fragmentation.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of from essence energy, so what can happen in what you're describing is where those impacts have been imprinted, when identification binds to them, and we create a sense of self-identity around the impression, it creates an experience of arrested development, where when we're going on and moving through life in certain realms, because this is connected to the historical, to our memory, and our memory is connected to our amygdala, there is a relationship where the hippocampus and the amygdala, and also the precingulate cortex, all have aspects of past storage of past experience connected to present moment emotional reaction. So as I understand it, what happens is, when we interact with something that we are on a nervous system instinctual level interpreting as something else, but it's really not that, because those neurons got fired simultaneously,
Mm-hmm.
and they got linked together. They just are reproducing, because we're designed for this optimal efficiency and reproducibility and predictability, etc.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, we'll even choose the traumatic outcomes because of their predictability, because there's an addiction process there. So I agree 100% with what Kyle was saying, because we have to be able to break that, essentially uncouple that wiring, and then have a new neural pathway fire in the experience of the thing that looks like that thing, so we can start to default to a new experience moving forward.
Beautiful,
man.
Absolutely. I think it's important that also, to speak that trauma is relevant when it left something. If not, leave it there. I don't know if that makes sense. It's like the trauma imprints something on us, meaning when I work with trauma, often I'm not looking at the past. I'm trying to get the person to see, what did you learn about yourself, the world, others, to that, because that will be constantly in your perception, and that's how you keep reliving the trauma. I can't trust people. All of that comes from traumatic experiences. Anything that overwhelms your capacity to process is a trauma. If you leave a child alone when they can't process their feelings, that traumatic experience is, because when we talk about trauma, people think about the big T's: sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse. But trauma is much more than that. It's any moment where the situation overcame your capacity to cope, because then you need to go into fight, freeze, and fly, and then you went into a coping strategy. Today, what you're doing that is keeping living your trauma is operating under their coping strategies in your relationships. So you need to get this new pathway, a new way, so you can start to respond different. So you start to really get out of your trauma. It's not going there and desensitizing. I remember when I studied DBT. No, brilliant. There's a lot of good things in it. But the trauma work there was prolonged exposure. The idea was that you desensitize. Basically, you traumatize the person so much that they go numb.
That's so painful to hear that. That's what we were doing as humans.
Gosh,
It's like, how do we feel simultaneously the experience of that starting to come up, and I'm starting, oh my, can feel that arc of the trigger reaction getting activated, having, and this is where I think a lot of this comes together. If I've done enough work with the grounding and the meditation and the healing and the awareness and et cetera, I have enough wherewithal, enough resourcing available to me to notice it and then do something somatic for myself to curb it. And then in that moment, while it's still having these little like flares of coming up, I can be simultaneously connected to safety. Now I'm wiring that experience in present moment awareness with being safe, and it changes the dynamic.
The whole thing. Absolutely. Fantastic. Now, you said something in your question, Pasha, that if he stops development, no, it just wires differently. Nothing stops development. Nothing can stop life, in my understanding. Okay? Yeah. Life is a force. It's like light. Nothing can stop. So the brain will develop, but we're wired differently. And in that aspect, there's a part that you said, yes, some parts we don't develop, but it's simple to understand. If you haven't had calcium as a child, your bones will be weak. If you didn't get certain things in your life emotionally, it's the same thing. You can't develop emotional maturity if you never had somebody, for instance, helping you to learn how to regulate your feelings. You will still be stuck there. But it's not because the brain didn't develop. The brain was wired with that part missing. The brain is developed, but developing is wired in a whole, let's say, twisted way. But the emotional development, yes, that gets stuck. Because it's a simple thing. If you don't give calcium, the bones don't develop. If you don't give if you don't meet the core emotional needs of a child, they can't develop. They haven't eaten. If they don't eat, they don't grow. And so we also, you hear this. There's another thing that Scott saying this. If you don't feel, you don't heal. I love that because it's such a thing that we hear in psychology, isn't it? In therapy, and the same thing is. Oh, you need to love yourself first to love others. But if you've never been loved, how do you do that? You go to a therapist or a coach, or you need to experience that love, and then we can't reproduce anything we didn't experience. We're going to stay in the theoretical level. My life started to change when I decide to be the best parent to myself that I could ever be. Then things start to change. It gets me touched. It gets me, I understood, and it was Scott saying as well, that I have to go after. I have to be willing to do what it takes. And I made that decision. I said, I will give to that little boy. I will be to him. I have to learn how to do it because I didn't know, and I'm still learning. But I made a commitment to that little part of me that is for me, my heart, that I will learn to be the best parent that he could ever have. Not perfect, but the best that I could be. And that started to change my life, and the level of responsibility changed, and everything starts to really move differently for me then.
That is the achievement.
That for me is like I can't talk about it. And I, for instance, in the same way, I imagine for you, Pasha, it was the love of Videsh that I needed to experience, to trust myself, to trust love. And then I had the experience, and now I knew the direction because I could experience that with him. But if not, you're basically telling a person to do something that they never experienced in their life. They can go theoretically, they can become great mind fuckers, but they're not going to be able to experience that really. At least this is the way I see.
I think it denies something really important, which is that we are relational beings by nature, and that we are here to connect with each other, and that healing does happen in co-regulation. Healing happens in relational dynamics, largely because the wounding is relational in its origin. Obviously there's traumas that are, a car accident, a natural disaster, etc. But so much of our emotional trauma is a result of dynamics. And so the wounding is relational. The healing is too. I know some of the greatest healing I've done in my life is in the work of my relationship with my partner, because she's constantly disconfirming old narratives that I feel, and it brings it up, and I get to heal it. And so I there's no way that I could have done that work over here by myself. I understand that we maybe need a moment sometimes after the end of a relationship to just like observe what happened and what our roles were and all the things, but ultimately the integrating experience does not require us to be in solitary confinement, you know. So.
Yeah, actually, that's one of the most dangerous things you can do to your mind is isolation.
Mm-hmm. And the piece, you know, about being your own parent, and that's so powerful, and I can feel that in my heart right now. I really appreciate your vulnerability and sharing that personal part of your journey. Yeah, I look in my own path, and I can remember when I used to hear people talk about inner child work, and it would just kind of, for a while, it would fly over my head. Then I thought it was whatever, yeah, inner child. What are you talking about, man? And then it was like when I really started to get it and relate with it, and then, you know, find those little, I just call them little Scott, you know, little Scots. And I'm like, oh, there's more than one. There's like all these aspects of me, and they're essentially looking for safety and love and connection. And so I think it's simultaneous. It's like, you know, a way I might put this into phase for us is there was a time when, and maybe in a more codependent space, where I would look for those things where I was outsourcing from my partner, let's say, and I'll put it in a romantic relationship context. So I'll feel this way. I feel valued if you choose me, right? And then now then that doesn't work out. So you go to like the next phase, which is like, you know what? I need to start choosing myself. So it doesn't matter about you. I'm going to choose me. And then it goes to, you know what? I'm going to choose somebody that values me because I value me and because I want to do that work. And this is a person I can do that work with. That's where they start to come together into a much different integrated experience of healing within the context of relationship.
Beautiful. Couldn't agree more. I was here. My hat was almost falling off. I said, yeah. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Thank you both so much. I was crying when you were talking, Kyle. It's really, really touching. Yeah, that love changes lives, and it's something that I respect so much in both of you, and I've received from you both. So thank you, and thank you for sharing it with the world with this podcast and coming together. We have a little bit of time left, so I just wanted to ask if there's anything you guys want to add.
I just felt coming from me the a little bit, Pasha, maybe just to inspire people. I want people to understand I have been working on myself. That is the biggest passion in my life, is to work on myself, and my work as a consequence of that. But it's me working on myself first. You know, I come from a very traumatic background. I had two major overdoses before I was 17. The thing that I encourage people, and I want to, if I could give that to people, you know, the most beautiful thing you can do to yourself in life is to go and look at yourself. Anything is possible. Anything is, you know, it wasn't easy. It's not easy. It wasn't easy. I had moments, you know, but I like sometimes to bring a bit of my own. You know, I'm very open about my history. I'm very open about what I have been through. Partially is to keep everybody look. Like we said, Scott said in the beginning, we were talking off the recording, but we all in this journey too, you know. And it's not. I don't have the answers. Nobody has it. The answers are inside. But you can get guidance, you can get support, because you can't do it alone. And then, so if people are resisting, looking for support, coach, therapy, yoga, all the things, go. It will be the best thing you can do in your life, you know. And it's so. If I look at the world I live today and the world I was born in, is like if I had come to a completely different world. And I know it's gonna get even better because I ain't gonna stop. these moments where you start to actually open yourself and look, man. For me, life was it was I came to therapy and the person asked me questions, and I said everything I know is pain and fear. I don't know anything else, and that was it. I was highly suicidal. I was involved with all sort of stuff, and I can say to you, I couldn't be happier to be alive at where I am in my life, coming from that to here. You see, and I just wanted to share that because I think, if you're there, if you're stuck, if you're listening to us at home, trust that it's possible. Go after, you have the strength, you have it in you. You can't do it alone. Look for somebody, and follow that part of you that I know is there, that knows that life is beautiful too, and there is everything available for us. We just need to trust. And we can't trust alone. Sometimes I couldn't trust myself. I needed to trust somebody. When my mom asked me, what did you get? If you could put it in one word, what did you get from Human University, from Village? I said trust. That opened all the doors for me. I couldn't trust myself. I would have never been able to trust myself on my own. I needed to trust him first, and he got it. He told me back on it that by trusting him, I start to trust myself. But I just wish people to get in touch with us, and however way, but do that for yourself, because you can live. I don't think we need to die to go to paradise. It's here, man. It's really here. And I just want to invite people to come and join paradise. And sometimes it's hell too, but that's beautiful too, man, because there's some fun in hell as well, sometimes. But I'm saying, yeah, well, where do you think all the bad guys go, and all I'm joking. But I'm saying is that for me is also, I learned to accept that life is, there's good and bad, painful and all. But I just wanted to put this a bit into words to say to people, is the best thing I did in my life was to go and look at myself. And I just like to encourage people, however their way is, it could be, but do it, and do it with somebody that you can trust, because it's the most beautiful thing in life, this transformation. I couldn't, I'm eager for more. I'm thirsty for more, and I'm more. I'm gonna stop talking. It's like I just wish to pass this on to people, that if you're sitting down in your house, mind fucking go, man. Make the first step, and the first step is the most important step of all. Just make that first step. It's worth it. It's worth everything.
Thank you so much, man. That was so beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah. I'll take on one more of those with you.
Yeah.
It's nice just to let the silence be. I think drop into that. It's really, really powerful. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. The only thing that I would add to that is that I feel like so often when we're in the throes of genuine turmoil, there's such a pervasive feeling of loneliness that we're just in it, like by ourselves in this pit. And I'd add to that too, the unique sort of elephant in the podcast room is, here we are, three men, having this conversation. And I'm so grateful for that, because I have this affinity for men's work, and like, man, some of the stuff that we got handed about how to deal with emotions and trauma was, we just weren't handed. And as a society that, hasn't always supported that. And so the result is that we suffer, and our suicide rates are high, and we identify with our suffering, further entrenching it. We feel isolated, and we're suffering alone and in silence, and the outcomes aren't healthy. We have the science, the data that shows that. And as a society, we need to start doing something different. We need to do this part differently. We need to be able to honor the full spectrum of our human experience. And my hope in having this podcast in totality is that we can start to bring the inside out and start to see that, fuck, man, I thought like that was like me. Like I thought I was going through that. And the reality is, it's like we're going through that. Like we're all doing it. There's no diploma, no degree, no training. There's no that makes you sort of immune to this human experience and of right. Yeah, there's no hierarchy here. We are gathered around in a circle, and we are helping each other by sharing what we're moving through. And just getting to do this, like just getting to talk about it, has a medicinal quality and value to it. And when we can find people that can just sit with us and they don't try to fix us and solve us and get rid of it and can just be with us, there's something about being witnessed compassionately in our pain that is therapeutic. And it can literally just be like a good friend that has some listening skills, and seeking out community where that is welcome to be seen, that you're not there's not this subtle suggestion to, kind of puff up your chest and act like you got it all together. And we can be real, and we can be humans, we can be messy, we can be figuring it out together in real time. It doesn't have to go perfectly. There can be unconsciousness, there can be rupture, there can be repair, there can be repeat, and it doesn't have to come with so much judgment. And even when it does, and we notice it, that judgment starts to change. And so I really appreciate, what you shared just now, Kyle, because it hopefully is just like sending a beacon out to people. It says, hey, you're not alone in this, and there are other people that are working through these things. And the result of getting to work through these things, something we all share in different capacities, is there's something innate in this process that says, I want to help other people that have been going through what I had been going through, or their own version of that, and like reach out a hand and just help, just be here. And so, there's resources available for you. And if you don't know where to start, an intention to heal and one message, it could be a DM, it could be an email, like one little reach out can be the thing that changes everything. And I hope that this podcast today is something that can, go out into the ethers and be something that can be there for people. And maybe, if one person hears this and says, you know what, I'm gonna reach out to one of those guys, or I'm gonna reach out to someone in my community, that would be worth so much. And the ripple effect of that is huge, and you're worth it. That's the bottom line, is like each of us are worth caring for and taking good care of and loving.
Beautiful, man. You took the words out of my mouth at the end there, or you're worth it. That's what I felt from Varesh. I had gotten kicked out of every high school I went to, from college, and I acted the same way when I got to the Human University, and he said, I want you to stay. You have some behavior to work on, but, and that, and that's like, I feel like that's our life's work. My life's work is to pass that on. And thank you both for doing it so beautifully, man. I'm really honored to call you my friends. Beautiful human beings. Thank you.
Reflect to you that you are doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And actually, for me, from my experience, you moved the whole thing. That's not only you doing for yourself, but you have this beautiful way, and your heart is always in front, and you want other people to get it. You want other people to experience, and you're the kind of, my feeling is that you're the kind of guy that you will put everybody in your house, and it's like you really have so much love and so much love, so many qualities, and you moving so many things, and you moved for me again. You moved this, you created this opportunity for us to be here. So you're not only doing it, and you're doing it beautifully, and thank you. And again, I mean, I would say, Scott, also, again, thank you for having me here in your podcast. And for me, I feel within an hour and a half, I feel very close. I feel, honestly, it might be a bit for some people out there. It's like I feel like I met another soul that I will be always happy, and then that works for me too. As for me, I am this kind of person. You can count on me with anything you need and anything. I believe in this manhood and how important that is. I had to find out what it is to be a man. I'm still working on for myself. I didn't really have things that I admire a lot in many aspects. When I this whole print of man. So being able to be here sitting with you guys is just really, I feel so recharged and so emotionally alive at the moment, with so much love in my heart and supporting and together, and thank you. I really appreciate sitting here. I could stay for hours. I know we have a life to go through. It really, really, really special, beyond what my mind could conceive before I sat here with you guys. So thank you so much. It's really touching, and you're beautiful, beautiful, beautiful people, and my heart is exploding and being here with you guys. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I'll reciprocate. I felt the same where in the middle of this thing, I'm like, I feel like I know you, man. I feel like a definite sense of brotherhood. I really appreciate you presencing that. Thank you. And yeah, Pasha, thank you for bringing us all together.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you, anyone who listened. I hope it landed well. You can feel it.
I feel like you want to close us out. See you next time on Healing the Divide.
All right, guys. See you next time on Healing the Divide. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Such a beautiful person. And remember, you're worth it.